Shabbat Shalom, everybody out there in YouTube world and Facebook world. Those are to be joining in for this Zoom illustration or service, word teaching. This is Malak Mashah coming to you again. And I think last week we had a lot of trouble. There was some stuff that was going on with the internet we couldn't get on. And so we waited to this week, which is as a matter of fact, today is the day of the Feast of Wheat Harvest. I've heard many people call it some people call it the Feast of New Wine. But if you go back to some of my videos, I explained that when Yahweh was in Jerusalem, when he passed through to see the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman, that had to have been Passover, all right? Passover, when he said that there's yet 4 months until harvest from that feast. What feast would you go to and then you will say 4 months, then comes harvest? And most likely it's talking about wheat harvest because it says that the fields are white already unto harvest. We know that wheat is the harvest that definitely turns white. Corn does also turns white, and it does this in the middle of the summer, middle to the later part of the summer. And that's when you harvest your corn and your wheat and everything. So if you count that, you do math, that he had to have been at Passover and was going back home with his disciples to Galilee area, Capernaum and Nazareth, where he comes from. And they decided to go through Samaria, where he knew he would meet up with the woman with the well. And he told them when she had ran off to go tell folks that she believes that she found the Messiah, he told them to look up on the fields, for they are white already to harvest. But harvest comes in 4 months, but it's already white already to harvest. So that harvest that comes in 4 months, you count from Passover. The time of Passover, you won't count just 50 days and come up with Pentecost. That's where the term Pentecost comes from. But you notice in the law, and when it talks about these holy days and how to keep them, it never calls Feast of Wheat Harvest the feast in the summertime, where you bring two loaves to the priest into the temple. It never calls it Pentecost. It gets called Pentecost in the New Testament for some reason. But we know that it says 7 weeks shall you count after you wave the wave offering, after Passover, after that wave sheaf offering of barley, after you wave that, you count 7 Sabbaths. 7 Sabbaths, all right, should be complete. After the 7th Sabbath, you count 50 days. And the day after that 7th Sabbath, you count number 50 days. And it's really something, because how we do it is a lot different than what probably Yahweh was doing. Because he said 4 months after Passover. Let's see, let's go to Leviticus 23. This is a chapter, one of the chapters that explain the holy days, all right? So we see the Sabbath, how to keep it. Leviticus is Passover, Leviticus 23, verse 4. Let's see. Leviticus 23, verse 9. Right after Passover and the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Let's see here. And Yahweh, Leviticus 23, verse 9, and Yahweh spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel and say unto them, when you be coming to the land which I give unto you, you shall reap the harvest there, then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of harvest unto the priest. He shall wave the sheaf before Yahweh. So this is right after Passover. So you have Passover, okay? Right after Passover, because Passover is on the first month on the 14th day. And it should be a full moon. Normally it's not normally, it will be a full moon, either on the 14th or 15th or both days. All right, it'll look full for sure. So on the 14th, 15th day of Abib, which is the first month of the Hebrew calendar, on the first month, 14th day is Passover. First month, 15th day is Feast of Unleavened Bread. It's a holy convocation. It's a Shabbat. All right, it's a Shabbat. All right. Right after that Sabbath, the next day, which would be the 16th day of the first month of Abib, would be this wave sheaf thing right here that it's talking about. And he shall wave, Leviticus 23:11, he shall wave the sheep before Yahweh to be accepted for you on the morrow after the Shabbat. And what is that Sabbath? On the morrow after is Feast of Unleavened Bread, the first day. So it's a feast that lasts 7 days, I believe. 7 days. And the first day of it is the Shabbat, the Sabbath. All right, many people say, well, it's a Sabbath we can make up no matter where our original Sabbath day is, because we think Sabbath is the 7th day of the Gregorian calendar. But in actuality, the Sabbath is the 7th day of the Hebrew calendar. So basically it's the regular Sabbath that you get from the new moon counting. All right. So the 15th day. So in every month, you should have the 8th day is the first Sabbath of the month of the Hebrew calendar, according to the new moon. The 8th day is the Shabbat. 15th day is the Shabbat. 22nd day is the Shabbat. 29th day is the Shabbat. So today is the 29th day, I believe, of is it the 4th month? All right, 4th month. The 29th day of the 4th month, so it's a Shabbat. All right, but right here, when they had the Feast of Unleavened Bread, okay, the first day, the day right after Passover is the regular Sabbath, plus it's a high Sabbath because it's the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. All right, and after that Sabbath, there's the wave sheaf offering. This wave sheaf is barley from the barley harvest, because that's the harvest that's going on at the time of Passover. It's barley. It's not the wheat harvest. All right, it's the barley harvest. Barley kind of looks like wheat a little bit. It has a little bit more beard on it. All right, and it's not, you don't have to take it through a tribulum to get the wheat, the fruit off of the plant. From what I know is that you take a, what is it called? You go up to a hill, and you take a pitchfork, and you have a pile of barley. You throw it in the air, and while the wind is blowing, it'll blow the chaff away, and the wheat, the fruit, will fall down on the ground. All right? That's not like wheat. Wheat, you have to take it through a tribulum. You have to really take it through something to get the wheat, the fruit out of the plant. Tribulum is where we get the word tribulation from. All right? So the wheat harvest, on wheat harvest day, is going to be in the summertime. It's not going to be anywhere close to the barley harvest. Wheat is going to be similar, the harvest time is going to be similar to corn. All right. So basically from Passover, which is in April, is 4 months from Passover to Feast of Unleavened Bread. Feast of wheat harvest, to the wheat harvest. All right. And that would, if you go like, for instance, you take April is the first month of the year. April, May, June, July. That's 4 months. So at the end of July, in which that's where we're at right now, we're in the month of July, at the end of July, you can expect the Feast of Wheat Harvest. All right, hold on just a moment. And that's where we're at, Feast of Wheat Harvest. So we're right on that day right now. And I don't see many people talking about this. They have different days for the new moon. They say that the full moon is the new moon, you know, because it ain't a moon until it's full. But I beg to differ. All right. And I see the dark moon, when the moon is dark, that means the past month is over. And right after the moon is dark, it's about maybe a second or two, the next second, there's light coming on the moon that you cannot see. All right. That's the new moon. The new moon can be new without you even seeing light on it. All right. And then eventually a day or two later, you can see the crescent. But it was already light coming on the moon before you could see it. All right. And that's how the moon is. When you come to the full moon, it's a full moon. It's one of the phases of the Sabbath. So the Sabbath days will have a pretty much a standardized moon. The first Sabbath on the 8th day of the month will be a half moon, probably perfectly half. The 7 days later, after that, on the 15th day of the month, it will be a full moon. All right, a full moon. All right, that's your second Sabbath. The third Sabbath will be a half moon. See how that works? That's how Yah did it. The Creator did it like that so that we would be able to, if we lost calendation, we can look up at the moon and tell about what day it is. Because the moon waxes and then wanes. If it's waxing to a full moon, we know it's at the beginning of the month. If it's waning from a full moon, from a half moon, we know we're going toward the end of the month. All right. But let me see. So Leviticus 23:11, and he shall weigh the sheaf before Yahweh. Now we know that Yahweh shall fulfill this because he became that wave sheaf offering. Because when he rose from the dead after the Shabbat, after Passover, after the Shabbat, he became the fulfillment of this sheaf, this wave sheaf. All right, before Yahweh to be accepted for you. On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it. He's our Melchizedek high priest, and he basically went up there and stood before the throne in heaven with himself. And you shall offer that day when you wave the sheep and he lamb without blemish. And this is all symbolic of Yahweh Shai. A he lamb, let's see here. A he lamb without blemish. That word without blemish, 8549 in the Hebrew. Let's see what that says here. Tamim, entire, integrity, truth without blemish, complete, full, perfect, sincerity, sound without spot. So that basically is showing us that this lamb that is being offered on the same day of the wave sheep offering is symbolic of what Yahweh Shai did. He appeared before Yahweh without blemish. Of the first year, now we should also realize, I used to think Yahweh Shai was born in the fall. And I had good reason to believe that, but I got better reason to believe that he was born at the beginning of the year. All right, around the time, the spring year. All right, not the Gregorian year, January and all of that. Somewhere in the Gregorian calendar month of April, because the lambs are born in the beginning of the year, like as if they know that it's getting ready to get warm, and they start having babies around that time, around the time when it starts becoming spring. All right. So when it says the lamb of the first year, that means that lamb would have to have been born the previous April, a previous Abib, we call it Abib in the Hebrew calendar, the previous Abib month. All right. So this lamb says of the first year, that means Yahweh Shai had to have been born around the time of Abib, the first month of the Hebrew calendar. So he would be without blemish of the first year for the first year for a burnt offering unto Yahweh. Now, literally, that lamb would be only a year old. All right, he'd be only a year old. But if it's Yahweh Shai saying that he was born in that first month of that year, and he died, he was offered up on sacrifice around the same time he was born, about 33 years previous. All right. For a burnt offering unto Yahweh, and the meat offering thereof should be 2 tenth deals. Right here, verse 14 says, and you shall eat neither bread nor parched corn nor green ears until the selfsame day that you have brought an offering unto your God. So that means that they could not partake of that barley harvest until they brought this wave sheaf offering in the temple. So around the same time and early in the morning when the priest was raising the wave sheaf offering of barley before the temple, before the Ark of the Covenant, Yahweh had been resurrected, got out of his tomb, all right, whatever that was, the grave, whatever, and had ascended, all right? He ascended to heaven and presented himself as a wave sheaf offering, all right? He fulfilled this, all right? Now, it says right here for the Feast of Weeks, let's go on down here a little further. Leviticus 23:15, you shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheep of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. See that? It didn't say 50 days. Notice that it didn't say 50 days. It says 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. And this really, when you count this, if you counted days, the 7 Sabbaths after that, around the same time that you waved the wave sheaf offering before the temple, in the temple before the Ark of the Covenant, you count those days as more than 50. All right, 7 Sabbaths, because you still, from that time, you're going to have about 6 days until the next Sabbath, the first Sabbath that you number. So literally, you're going to have, let's see, somewhere around 49 plus 6 days, around 55 days. That's not 50 days. Catch what I'm saying? I hope you understand that. If you number 50 days, 7 Sabbaths, it didn't say days, it says 7 Sabbaths. Let's read that again. You should count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, and the day that you bought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. So you're numbering Sabbaths, 7 Sabbaths. So the next Sabbath after the wave sheaf offering would be 6 days later. And then that would be Sabbath 1. If you number the days again, you number Sabbaths, 7 Sabbaths equals 49 days if you just did the 7 Sabbaths, all right? 49 days, all right? But if you number in days on this count, it's gonna be 55 days, not 50. Let's continue to read. Let's continue to read. Even unto the morrow after the 7th Sabbath, all right? We're still talking about the 7, remembering 7 Sabbaths. Even unto the morrow after the 7th Sabbath, shall you number 50 days. Now this is where you number the 50 days. After you counted the 7 Sabbaths from the day of the wave sheaf. This is when you number 50 days. So that means you count the 7 Sabbaths, and then starting from the morrow after that 7th Sabbath, you number 50 days. So it's more than 50 days. So that's why the Old Testament don't call it Pentecost, which means 50, because you're numbering 7 Sabbaths after the wave sheaf offering, which is really 55 days. Not 50 days. 7 Sabbaths from that day that you wave that wave sheaf offering is 55 days, somewhere 55, 56 days, somewhere around that. It's not 50 days. All right, because you're not just starting at the first Sabbath. You're waiting, you have to wait 6 days to the first Sabbath. You number 1, that Sabbath, and the next Sabbath 2. All right, so you come out 55, somewhere around that many days. All right, and after that is counted, then you number 50 days. See? Then you number the 50 days right here. And that's going to take you all the way into where we at right now. That's going to make sense to see that wheat harvest, the wheat is white and ready to harvest. It turns gold, a gold color, and it bends over. The fruit of it gets heavy on the plant and it bends. That's when the farmers know the harvest. They know the harvest is at hand, all right? But 50 is 7 Sabbaths, then number 50 days. And that's how you get to your Pentecost, all right? So that's where we're at today while we're recording this, all right? And verse 17 says, and you should bring out of your habitations 2 wave loaves of 2 tenth deals. They should be of fine flour, they shall be baking with leaven. They are the first fruits unto Yahweh. All right, so this is called also Pentecost. What they call Pentecost, but they incorrectly call it that because it means 50, you know. But this is to be called the first fruits unto Yahweh. And I've seen it where it's called in the Old Testament first fruit of wheat harvest. All right, you shall offer with the bread, and the bread is going to be of wheat, all right? Because it's called wheat harvest, right? You don't harvest barley in the summer, it's in the spring. So you harvest wheat in the summer. And this makes perfect sense. You shall offer with the bread 7 lambs without blemish of the first year, and 1 young bullock, and 2 rams. They should be for a burnt offering unto Yahweh, with the meat offering, and a drink offering, and even an offering made by fire of sweet savor unto Yahweh. All right. Verse 20, and the priest shall wave them with the bread of the first fruits for a wave offering before Yahweh, with the 2 lambs, and they shall be holy to Yahweh for the priest. All right. So basically, this feast where we at, this day, is a holy day. And most people are not really recognizing that it's really a holy day. Because why? Because they have not counted what we just counted correctly. All right. They haven't counted. And I've been guilty of it too. But when you get the right calendar and you count the right calendar, you use the right calendar, which is a lunar solar calendar, and the moon's phases are right on the Sabbaths, are perfect phases on the Sabbath, then I think you're right on it. You can really see that Pentecost, or Feast of Wheat Harvest, mistakenly called Pentecost, is in the late summer. All right, it's in the late summer. Because grapes, and I mentioned it before, grapes really are ripe around the summertime, in the midsummer. All right, that's when they're mostly ripe, but especially the wheat. If you don't get the grapes right, if there's some grapes that's ripe in the spring, you still can go by that wheat. That wheat is not going to be ripe in the spring. It's not going to be gold colored, white and ready to harvest. Like Yahweh said, other than that, you have 4 months until harvest. Look up on the fields because they're white already to harvest. He told his disciples when he was dealing with the woman at the well. All right. And he said that because she was coming back with some people to check him out to see if he was the Messiah. And he was going to harvest them. They was going to be part of his harvest of souls. All right. But let's talk a little bit about this day. And this day is going to be a surprise because God normally does all of his things, his redemption, his saving of Israel on these holy days, as we see in Leviticus 23. And I think there's another chapter, I can't recall. There's another chapter, maybe in Deuteronomy, I believe. Deuteronomy or Numbers, that talks about all of these holy days, these feast days. All right. And I think Exodus does too, but it doesn't include all of these days because Exodus chapter 20, 19 and 20, all the way to chapter 24 is talking about Yah's feast days before Israel broke Yah's commandment by worshiping the golden calf. That was under the covenant, all right? And that's the difference. When you read these things in Exodus chapter 19 and chapter 24, that was a covenant that was being agreed to. There was no sin yet. But we see later on, Yah given a book of the law because Israel sinned. And he placed them under the book of the law. When he gave Israel the covenant in Exodus chapter 19, starting in Exodus chapter 19, there was no book of the law because it was a book of the covenant, because they had not transgressed, they had not committed adultery against Yahweh yet. The book of the law came because of the adultery. So we were placed under the law. But you don't see all of these feast days when he made the covenant. I think there's only 3. He said 3 times a year, shall your men appear before me in Exodus chapter 19 through 24, 3 times in a year. All right. And he mentions the first feast, which is Passover. He mentions the second feast, which is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. He mentions the feast at the end of the year. All right. At the covenant, he only mentions 3 feasts. All right. But after the book of the law, which came because of the transgression, all right, he mentions 7 feasts. All right. He mentions 7. And that's starting with not the Passover, but the Sabbath. The Sabbath is the first one he mentions. Right there, verse 3, chapter Leviticus 23, verse 3, mentions the Sabbath. Then Passover, that's 2. It's 2 feasts. Feast of first fruits, 3. All right, that's the one where Yahweh went and showed himself in the heavens, 3. Feast of Weeks, notice it don't say Pentecost, that's 4. Let's see here. Feast of Trumpets, that's 5. Day of Atonement, 6. And we need one more to round this thing off. Feast of Booths, Sukkot, that's 7. And that's the feast at the end of the year. There's no more after that. Unless you want to call Hanukkah a feast, but there's no Hanukkah in the scriptures. Not in the canon that we get from the nations that broke it down to 66 books. We see it in the Catholic Bible with the Feast of Maccabees and in the Apocrypha with Maccabees, that there is a Hanukkah, but it's not mentioned in the law of Moses as the 7 holy feasts, one of the 7. All right. So we are at a day that Yah could really do some great things if he wants to. If it's that time, he does all of his deliverance for Israel on feast days, like the first one we saw back up here. Hold on just a moment. The first one we saw back up here, Passover, because the Sabbath was already implemented at creation, right? He rested on the 7th day from all his works. We see that Sabbath, but the first feast that has something to do with deliverance for Israel is Passover. Passover, all right? And it goes in order. That was Yah's first work, delivering his people. That happened in Egypt, all right? And then we see Yahweh dying on the cross to fulfill that. Feast of first fruit, he rose from the dead. There it is right there. He rose from the dead to become the first fruits of those that slept. All right, Feast of Weeks. And this is where we're at right now, Feast of Weeks. And this happened, part of this happened in 2,000 years ago with what we call Pentecost. All right, what we call Pentecost, which is not really Pentecost, it's not 50 days, it's 49, 7 Sabbaths complete after the Feast of Wave Offering, 7 Sabbaths complete. And then, which is around 55 days, and then you add 50 days to that. That brings you to Feast of Weeks. And this is the feast that Yahweh told his disciples to wait in Jerusalem till they be filled with power from on high. All right, this is the Feast of Weeks, which many call Pentecost, which means 50. But it was really in the summertime, all right? In the serious summertime. And it was a harvest time, right? Wheat is harvest. Corn is around the same time. All right, Feast of Weeks. All right, and the Holy Ghost came upon the disciples. They waited. He told them that they was going to be filled with power from on high. And that's what happened. There was a sound of a rushing mighty wind, and move this seat around a little bit. Sound of a rushing mighty wind, and tongues of fire set up on all of their heads, and they went out and started speaking and ministering in the streets of Jerusalem to the people that was there for the feast. And the people were noticing that these disciples were speaking in their languages from the lands that they had migrated from to the feast, supernaturally speaking in other languages. All right, we see that in the book of Acts chapter 2. All right, and so at this day right here is when the Holy Ghost came down upon the disciples, the power. All right, but I see this day has 2 parts to it. That this is going to be the day that when Yah comes, when the time comes, there's going to be power again poured upon the believers. This might even be what we call the rapture of the church. Now, some would say that's the Feast of Trumpets. All right, Feast of Trumpets. All right. But this Feast of Weeks that has to do with Pentecost has something to do with a wedding. Also, some of the symbols of it, even with the European Jews, see it as a wedding feast, the Feast of Weeks. All right. It's a wedding feast. All right. So we can look at it and say, well, Feast of Trumpets, that happens around the 7th month of the Hebrew calendar, which is somewhere around September. Could be the time that the rapture or whatever takes place. But I'm gonna be straight up with you. I think that something big time is gonna happen on the Feast of Weeks, on this day that we're talking about today. All right. Because he said he's gonna pour out the Spirit upon all flesh in the latter day. And we could say that happened 2,000 years ago. But it looks more like there's another feast, there's a latter day reign of the Holy Spirit, there's a latter pouring out. You look at the first pouring out 2,000 years ago is rain, all right, the harvest season of rain, preparing the ground for a harvest, all right, and that's what they were doing 2,000 years ago. And then you see a latter rain, and he said in the latter days he would pour out the Spirit, so it looks like a latter rain that's going to happen around this time. My phone is talking to me. I didn't say nothing to her. All right. So the latter rain of the Holy Spirit would be somewhere, it probably hit somewhere around this time right here. And would it hit today? It could. It could hit today, where Yah's Spirit just gets poured out. All right. But we don't know, for anybody to say they know the day or the hour, don't believe him. Yahweh said, no man knows, not even the Son, but the Father only. The angels don't even know. So, but I believe that it's going to happen big time. Something's going to happen, a latter day rain, at least that the Holy Spirit will happen on the day of Pentecost or the day of Feast of First Fruits, which is around this time of the year. All right. And if we look at the book of Daniel, it speaks about the image, the rock, the stone that was cut out without hands. Let's go there real quick. The stone that was cut out without hands that smote this image on the feet that Nebuchadnezzar dreamed about, with the head of gold, chest of silver, and all of that. This rock that's cut out, stone, cut out without hands and swung at the feet and hit the image on the feet. Let's go there real quick. Let's see. Daniel 2, verse 34 says, thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet. They were of iron and clay and brake them to pieces. And I'm speaking to most people that know the scriptures pretty well, that have read these things already. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, the gold broken to pieces together and became like a chaff of a summer threshing floors. And this is key right here. All right, because the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver. And remember, the image was an image of a man who had a head of gold, chest of silver, loins of, what was that? Loins and thighs. Let's see, what was it? Gold, silver. All right, so let's see. Head of gold, torso of silver, and we go on down there. There's iron, which is the legs area, and then miry clay and iron mixed together is the feet. All right. All right. So the iron, the clay, the brass. Yeah, part of it is brass. I missed out on the brass. All right, which is probably the loin, thigh area, which represents Alexander the Great's kingdom. All right. So all of these represent different kingdoms. The head of gold represented Babylon, the ancient Babylon with Nebuchadnezzar. The chest of silver represents Media Persia. And we see the brass represents Alexander the Great, the Greeks. And then we see the iron represent Rome. And the mixing of the iron and clay on the feet represent the system that we're living up under right now, or that's coming to this thing right now. Because we see the iron still mixed in with the clay. So the iron was Rome, right? But it's mixed in with miry clay on the feet. So who is the clay? We won't go into that right now. But it says they were broken to pieces together and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And this right here is key. Chaff of the summer threshing floor. What threshing floor? What does this have to do with anything? Well, it's a harvest term. Threshing floor is where you thresh your wheat with the tribulum. All right, the tribulum is where you get the word tribulation from. All right, because obviously Yah sees us like wheat. His harvest of his people in the latter days is like wheat. All right, the wheat and the tares, Yahweh say done a parable of. Which when you harvest wheat, it's in the summer. All right, not in the spring. That's why Pentecost can't be correct. It's a summer harvest, and basically, this stone that was cut out with our hands hit the image on the feet and grounded the powder, and it becomes like the chaff. So when you take the wheat through the tribulum, what comes off of it is chaff. All right, chaff. That means the stuff that's a part of the wheat you really don't want to eat. All right. It's just like most people don't want to eat. When they eat the watermelon, they cut off the watermelon and throw the rind into the garbage. All right. Well, that's what kind of like chaff is to wheat. All right. You want to take the chaff, get that chaff off of the plant part off of it so you can get the grain of the wheat. And that's where you make bread and you grind it and make bread and flour and all of that with. So the chaff, it became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. So something's going to happen right here. This is a hint. And this is the reason why I believe that something's going to happen around this time, one of these years. All right. And it has to do with the destruction of the reign of man on the earth. That means the kingdom is going to come. And that's where we see verse 34, thou sawest too that a stone was cut out without hands, but smote the image upon his feet. All right, and in the iron and clay break them in pieces. All right, so this has to do with the kingdom. All right, this has to do with the kingdom. It's cut out with our hands. And there's a lot of stuff in this right here. There's a lot of fruit, a lot of stuff that is edifying. All right, but the major thing is that it'd be around this day, one of these years, where the stone will be cut out without hands, smite the image on the feet. And the image is basically, we see it in the New Testament in Revelation, the image of the beast. All right, the image of the beast reigning over the earth. All right, the reign of the man of sin, the reign of the heathen nations, the times of the Gentiles. That's what that image is. All right, the times of the Gentiles. It's the image of the beast. It's the dragon. The reign of Satan over the earth with these nations, with these governments, all right, starting with Babylon. And we see that in the New Testament, in the Old Testament, it speaks of a Babylon, all right? It speaks of a Babylon that's going to be destroyed with military equipment. And the first Babylon that was thousands of years ago was not destroyed with military equipment. It was just overran and taken over. So this Babylon is basically forecasted to be in the latter day, right, with us. So that means that head of gold is still around. All right, the head of gold is still around. All right, but this here's the thing that I want to look at. A stone was cut out without hands. All right, and some of the videos I've already done, I've mentioned something about this stone. That we know that this stone has something to do with Yahweh Shai, the Messiah, that died on the cross, that went back to heaven. It's up there in the heavens, sitting on the right hand of God, with the power on high. All right. But what's going to cause him to come down and smite this thing on the feet and grind it to powder and take over where the kingdom comes for Yah's people, the children of Israel? What's going to cause that to happen? All right. And it's really a good question. It's really a good question. But one of my major thoughts on this is that we see, and I could be wrong, but I could also be right too. We see that that in the book of Revelation, that the one we see Yahweh sitting on the right hand of God. All right. But we see that there's one sitting on the throne that Yahweh says is his father. All right. Which is God. And he says that this one that's sitting on the throne is greater than him. All right. But also we see something right here, Revelation 7. All right. Revelation 7. Verse 15, therefore are they before the throne of God, talking about these people standing before the throne in Revelation 7, of all nations, tongues, languages, and ethnicities. They standing before the throne and praising the one that sits on the throne and the one that is the Lamb, all right? Because it divides them. It doesn't say that the Lamb is the one sitting on the throne. It says, therefore are they before the throne of God, these people, and serve him day and night in his temple, and he that sitteth on the throne shall dwell among them. This is something that you never hear people talking about too much, because it's basically saying, it's not saying that Jesus, the Lamb, and the one that sits on the throne is the same person. It's not saying that. But it's saying that the one that sits on the throne will dwell among the people. We read this sometimes like as if this is something going on up in heaven that's going to be going on for like 7 years. And this is false theology, because the major thing is saying that these people are before the throne in the temple. All right. And they can literally say, well, there's a temple in heaven. But right here, here's the key to it. It says, he that sitteth on the throne shall dwell among them. Let's look at that word dwell. He's going to dwell among the people. All right. It's not saying Yahweh Shai won't be there, but it says the one that sits on the throne will dwell among the people. And we would think God is going to be around the people. Let's see, dwell, skeneo, it means to tent or to encamp. In other words, another word is tabernacle down here, right here at the tabernacle, the symbol of protection. So basically, it says to occupy as a mansion, right there, to occupy as a mansion. Now, Yahweh Shai said, in his father's house are many mansions. He goes to prepare a place, all right? Here's the point, here's the question. How will the one that sits on the throne dwell among the people? Okay, let's go back around here again to look at some more of this. And he shall dwell among them. For the Lamb which is in the midst of the throne shall feed them. All right, it's talking about the Lamb right here. It's not talking about the one sitting on the throne, but he's in the midst of the throne, shall feed them, shall lead them into living fountains of waters. And God, and this is the one that sits on the throne, is God, shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. All right. So this is a heck of a question. Then it makes you wonder, what is this stone? Who is the stone that's being cut out with our hands? Because we know it's a person and smiting the image on the feet. All right. We know it's a person. We know it hasn't happened yet. We know that it might have something to do with Yahweh Shai. All right. So it's a stone. Let's take a look at something else here. Okay, yeah, that's why I was when 1 Peter chapter 2. Peter's going to talk about this a little bit here. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 2 says, as newborn babes desire the sincere milk of the word, that you may grow thereby. And so be you have tasted that the Lord is gracious, to whom coming as unto a living stone. See that? To whom coming as unto a, and as unto is in italics right there. But let's read it without the italics. To whom coming a living stone, disallowed indeed of men, but chosen of God, precious. All right. So it's still not telling us exactly who this stone is. Let's see, verse 5. You also as lively stones have built up a spiritual house, a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifice acceptable to God by Jesus Christ. So it still didn't tell us. It says we are lively stones. All right. But whoever this is a living stone. In verse 4, to whom coming a living stone. Let's look at the word living, 2198 in the Greek. We're going to see who is this stone that's cut out without hands that smites the image of the feet in the latter days. Zeho, the Zeo or Zeo, that's Greek 2198, to live, life, lively, quick. So basically it's saying that the stone is living. And we see Elijah going into before Jezebel and Ahab. He said, as the Lord God of Israel liveth, before whom I stand. We've seen Psalms. The Lord liveth, blessed be the rock. Let the God of my salvation be exalted. So let's talk about the Lord. Yahweh liveth. All right. Yahweh liveth. He liveth on his own self. All right. And it calls him a living stone. This living stone, we would rather see this be the God, what we call Yahweh, whom Yahweh shall worship. All right, he's living. He lives on his own accord. As a matter of fact, Yahweh shall lives through him, through God. All right, but it's the Yahweh that's the living stone. And it's the saints down here, the ones that are saints, that ain't Yahweh, that are called lively stones. It's the same word in the Greek, but it's called, they translated as lively stones. All right. And which have built up a spiritual house and holy priesthood to offer spiritual sacrifice acceptable to God by Jesus Christ. So we're lively stones. Yahweh Shai is the chief cornerstone, which verse 6 is going to talk about. Wherefore also it is contained in the scripture. Let's see, let me go to verse 6. It's also contained in scripture. Behold, I lay in Zion a chief cornerstone, elect, precious, and he that believeth on him shall not be confounded. Unto you, therefore, which believe, he is precious, but unto them which be disobedient, the stone which the builders disallowed, the same is made the head of the corner. The stone of stumbling and a rock of offense, and unto them which stumble at the word, being disobedient, wherefore also they were appointed. All right. So, who is the stone that's cut out without hands, that smites the image on the feet in Daniel chapter 2? I believe that it's really Yahweh, the one that sits on the throne, that's going to dwell among the people. How does this happen? What about the Lamb? Well, I see the Lamb as the body of the one that sits on the throne. All right, the Lamb is the body of the one that sits on the throne. It's an eternal body. Let's go here real quick. It's an eternal body. 2 Corinthians chapter 5. For we know that if 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 1, but we know that if our earthly house of this tabernacle were dissolved, we have a building of God and house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. This is everybody that believes. That's Yah's people. They have a building of God and house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. For in this we groan, earnestly desiring to be clothed upon with the house which is from heaven. And so be that being clothed, we shall not be found naked. For we that are in this tabernacle do groan, being burdened, not that we would be unclothed, but clothed upon, that mortality might be swallowed up of life. That means everybody that definitely for sure gets a glorified body. All right. So if Yahweh comes down and dwells among the people, He comes down and dwells among the people. How would he dwell? Because we know that if he comes down in his eternal state, he burned up everything. There'd be nobody able to handle his presence, unless he takes on a human body. And if he does take on a human body, what body would he take on? Well, I believe he would take on Yahushai's body. That basically when Yahushai said, I and the Father are one, let's go to these scriptures right here. Let's go down to John chapter, I think it's 14. When Yahushai says he and the Father is one, all right? When he says, I and the Father are one, I believe that's what he was talking about, that Yahushai is the physical embodiment of the Father, but the Father did not fully embody him back then. All right, but the Father, some type of way, comes down here and embodies the body of Yahushua Mashiach. John chapter 14, verse 5 says, Thomas said unto him, Lord, we know not whither thou goest, and how can we know the way? Yahushua said unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. So if you're listening to me really good, this might start making some sense. That the Father is going to be inside the body of Yahushua. All right. The Father is going to be occupying the body of Yahushua. That Yahushua is the physical part of Yahweh. All right. Then you can see that no man come up unto the Father but by him. That means that manifestation he had 2,000 years ago. No one comes unto the Father but by that manifestation. If you had known me, you should have known my Father also. From henceforth, you know him and have seen him. This really starts making sense. If you had known him, you should have known his Father also. Why? Because he only does things that his Father does. All right. He didn't do all the whole thing. But when the Father takes on that manifestation of Yahushua Mashiach, then Yahushua will be complete. All right. He and the Father will be one, and greater works than what he did 2,000 years ago will be done, because he goes to the Father. That means he and the Father will be one. They will be in the same thing. Yahushua is the body, the Father is the spirit that dwells in the body. All right. Philip said unto him, the Lord shows the Father, and it sufficeth us. Yahushua said unto him, have I been so long time with you, and yet hast thou not known me? He that has seen me has seen the Father. And how sayest thou then, show us the Father? Believest not thou not that I am in the Father, and the Father in me? Whereas I speak unto you, I speak not of myself, but the Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. So if the Father dwells in Yahushua, let's go to Colossians. If the Father dwells in Yahushua, was he dwelling in him 2,000 years ago? Yeah. He was dwelling in him, but not in his fullness. All right, not in the fullness. Let's check this out with Colossians. I think it's let's see, let's try chapter 1. Let's try chapter 2. It's somewhere around here. Chapter 3. Let me look it up real quick. The scripture goes like this: for in him dwells all the fullness of the Godhead bodily. All right, let's see. Yeah, I was right at it, 2:9. Colossians 2:9. For in him, and who? Yahushua, dwelleth all the fullness of the Godhead bodily. So it was all the fullness of the Godhead bodily in Yahweh 2,000 years ago. The question is the word fullness. All right, let's go up there, 4138 in the Greek. Pleroma is the word, 4138 in the Greek. Repletion or completion. All right, here's the key word for this right here, already at the top, completion. So that means is Yahweh Shai complete? That's the question. All right, that is subjectively what feels as content, supplement, copiousness, multitude, what is filled, container, performance period, what is put in to fill up, piece that filled up, fulfilling, fullness. What I would say is that if Yahweh Shai is still in the heavens and the saints are still down here on earth, the fullness hasn't happened yet. All right. But in him, it's coming up. In him is going to dwell. And probably you can say, well, right now, it might be that he's in him right now. All right. But as far as our salvation, when this fullness takes place, all right, and when the fullness of time takes place, Yah is going to send him again. All right, except this time he will be in him in his fullness. Yahweh will be in the Son in his fullness. All right. So what's going on there? I see it as that Yahweh is going to be in the Lamb in his fullness. He's going to be in the Lamb. Let's go to another scripture. And this will be that stone that's cut out without hands. All right, that hits the image on the feet. Revelation, let's see, where we at? Revelation 6. And we see the 7 seals. We're going to go to the 6 seals. The 6 seals. And when he had opened the 6th seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. And the stars of heaven fell into the earth, even as a fig tree casts up her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together. Every mountain and island were moved out of their places. And the kings of the earth and the great men and the rich men and the chief captains, the mighty men and every bondman and every free man hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne. Look at that. Let me highlight this. Hide us from the face. And let's look at that word 4383, face. All right. Face of the one that sits on the throne. And who is that? That has to be the Father, the Yahweh himself. All right. Prosopon, 4383 in the Greek. Visage is one of the words for this. The front is being towards view. That is countenance, aspect, appearance, surface. By implication, presence or person, outward appearance. Before, countenance, face, fashion, men's persons, presence. So it said, hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne. The one that sits on the throne is Yahweh, not Yahweh Shai. All right. He sat down with his Father in his throne. But the one that sits on the throne is Yahweh himself. All right. And from the wrath. Notice it doesn't say hide us from the Lamb, and from the wrath of the Lamb. Hide us from the one that's the face of the one that sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. See? So what's going on there? It didn't say hide us from the Lamb, it said hide us from his wrath. What's going on there? It has to be that the Father has taken on the manifestation of the Lamb. He's living within the Lamb, because we just saw it. Within Yahweh Shai, Mashiach, dwells all the fullness of the Godhead bodily. That means that the Father dwells in Yahweh Shai bodily. All right, so that's the reason why what we see coming here is that stone in Daniel chapter 2 that hits the image on the feet. That's what we see. And he's in the body, because remember, all of the saints are going to have a tabernacle, a body, a mansion. that's being prepared for them. Well, what is prepared for the Father? The one that sits on the throne, the Lamb. That means that body is his body. So when we see Yahweh, we will see Yahweh Shai. All right? When we see Yahweh, we will see Yahweh Shai because that is their outward manifestation, the face of Yahweh. When we see a scripture saying that he is the express image of Yah's person, right? And then the scriptures say that he was the express, let's see if we can find that. Yahweh is the express image of, and we just read it, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father, he said, right? So he is the physical manifestation. Let's see. The express, let's try that. Express. Hebrew 1:3. Start at 1:2 or 1:1. Let's try that. God, who at sundry times and in diverse manners spake in time past unto the fathers by the prophets, having these last days spoken unto us by his Son, whom he hath appointed heir of all things, by whom also he made the worlds. All right. Who being the brightness of his glory and the express image of his person. Who's the topic here? It's talking about God, right? So it's saying his Son is the brightness of his glory and the express image of his person. All right. So that means that Yahweh Shai and the Father are basically as one as you are. Your body and your spirit is one. That's what's going on there. So you look in the mirror, you see how you look physically, but no one can see how you look spiritually. But your spirit man shines outside of your body. All right. And expresses yourself through that body that you live in. All of us are like that. All mankind. Their spirit expresses themselves through their body. All right. So why could this not be God? All right, who being the brightness of his glory and express image of his person and upholding all things by the word of his power, when he had by himself purged our sins, sat down on the right hand of the majesty on high. Hold on just a moment. So that stone that we see in Daniel chapter 2, all right, it smites the image on the feet, it's cut out without hands, has to be something going on like this. And most of us, I'm gonna be honest with you, I used to worship Jesus too, as if he was the Father. But in actuality, it's God that we worship. And we worship him through Jesus. I don't think Yah's up there getting mad at folks that's worshiping Jesus. But I do believe that in the end, we'll see it like this. We'll see that Yahweh Shai is the physical representation. That means he does everything that the Father in him does. The Father in him expresses himself. And that's the Father. That when you see Yahweh Shai, you see the Father expressing himself through Yahweh Shai. 2,000 years ago, it was for the salvation of our sins. It was for us being redeemed from sin. But this redemption is taking place in the latter days. It's going to be him coming to restore and redeem Israel from not only sin, but from their enemies. All right? But from their enemies. And when he shows up, let's go back there again. He shows up in that body. In what body? In the body of Yahweh Shai Mashiach. All right? It'll be the Father, fullness of Godhead bodily when he shows up. That means it'll be Yahweh Shai's body, but it'll be the personality, the fullness of the personality, not just half of him holding himself back, but it'll be him in his fullness, showing and revealing and speaking and everything through Yahweh Shai. All right? In verse 16, Revelation 6:16, it said unto the mountains and rocks, fall on us, then hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne See, how are we gonna see, how they gonna see his face? How they gonna know it's his face? All right. And hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? So the face, that means the person inside the body, is the one that sits on the throne. Yahweh, in other words. All right. So he has a physical face, obviously, a physical manifestation. How is he going to have a physical manifestation if he's the invisible God? See? So it looks like he's taken on the body of Yahweh, which is really not anything big because he was living in the body of Yahweh 2,000 years ago. All right. He is the express image of the one that sits on the throne, Yahweh is. So when he says, I and the Father are one, basically he's saying that he's as much a part of the Father as your body is part of you. All right. But the person on the inside of that body is the one that's controlling everything. So there it is, the face of him that sitteth on the throne from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath has come, and you should be able to stand. All right. So literally with this day that we're living in today, the Feast of Wheat Harvest. All right. So one of these days, this thing is going to happen. The Father's going to come down. And that's what we should be expecting. All right. Hold on just a moment. This is what we should be expecting. The Father is coming down. Most people say Jesus is coming back. Yeah, he's coming back. All right. But when he comes, guess what it's going to be? It's going to be the one that sits on the throne. And this should get us up and jumping because you don't hear that much about doing something in the latter days because most of the teaching is not about that. It's more focused on Jesus, but really in actuality, Jesus is the Lamb down here, right here. The Lamb is the physical part of him. The spiritual part of him is the one that's face of the one that sits on the throne. All right, that's going to dwell. And where was we at in chapter 7? It says the one that sits on the throne shall dwell. Let's go there real quick. Verse 15, Revelation 7:15. Therefore are they before the throne of God and serve him day and night in his temple. And he that sitteth on the throne shall dwell among them. See that? That means that's Yahweh, the one that sits on the throne, will dwell among the people. Now, I used to think Yahweh Shai was Yahweh, I'll be honest with you. I was wrong. Yahweh Shai is the Lamb. His Father is the one that sits on the throne. The one that sits on the throne shall dwell among the people. How could that be if he's spiritual? He's only a spirit. That's because he takes on the body also. All right, and that body is Yahweh Shai's body. All right, and the big thing about this is that in order for him to do that, he would have had to have some type of way manifested himself down here in regular human sinful flesh. And by faith lived his life and got a reward. All right. That means the Father himself had come down some type of way without people knowing it, without people realizing it, which could be the reason why people don't listen. They don't teach what I'm teaching. All right. I'm going to show something to you. Revelation chapter 3. That the one in Revelation that Yahweh Shai is always talking about, or the one that's talking and giving rewards out. I'm not going to say it was Yahweh Shai. But the one in Revelation that's talking, he's giving rewards. And Revelation chapter 3 says, verse 20 says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come in and sup with him and he with me. Watch this. To him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me at my throne, even as I also overcame and sat down with my Father in his throne. When we look at, we're looking at something right here that you might want to look at very seriously. To him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I overcame and sat down with my Father in his throne. Could it be that the Father is this overcomer? He comes down without people realizing it's him. in the latter days. And he dwells in the earth too. But he dwells not for the purpose of dying for sins. That's already been done. He comes in order to complete the work that Yahushua began, all right, that he did. He comes to basically get the reward. What we see here, to him that overcometh will I give to sit with me in my throne, all right? He comes to reign, all right? So if the one that sits on the throne going to dwell among the people, he's going to have them manifested physically. That means he's going to be just like a regular human being that gets rewards. All right. And you and I know who he is, but his reward that he gets is the body of Yahushua. And that makes perfect sense when you read this scripture right here. To him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I overcame and sat down with my Father in his throne. So he overcame and sat down with his Father in his throne. Maybe the Father will come down here and sit with the Son in his throne. Catch what I'm saying? I hope you see that. He says, he that has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. So there's another scripture that says, he that overcometh shall inherit all things. Let me go there real quick. Revelation 21:7. He that overcometh shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. All right. Shall inherit all things. Now I look at this and I read this according to what I've already read in the Overcomers Rewards and in the books of the letters to the churches at the beginning of Revelations, chapter 2 and 3. The overcomer, all right, doesn't seem to be 2 or 3 people, just everybody, just given to everybody. All right, because it says he that overcometh. You notice it didn't say they. It didn't have a T right here at the beginning, nor a Y at the end. It didn't say they, it says he that overcometh shall inherit all things. And I will be his God and he should be my son. All right. And if he inherits all things, that means that all, let's look at that word, 3956 for all things. Let's see. The whole, a primary word, all, any, every, the whole. All manner of means, always, whatsoever, whole, whatsoever. So that means whoever this is that overcomes is going to get everything. All right. And from where I stand at and what I'm looking at and what I study, this he right here, I believe is the one that sits on the throne. That his manifestation, he's going to manifest down here too. All right. And he will be the one that's the real true Messiah. All right. The one that the Jews are still looking for. They got a point, but there's one still yet to come. All right. But this he right here will be the one that turns out to be the Father in the end. All right. That's what I get so far. All right. If I'm wrong, I'll come on here and tell you, hey, I was wrong about that. And I've been wrong before. But this he that overcometh that shall inherit all things, I don't think it's really the whole people. I think it's a person. And it's not Yahushua. All right. It's not Yahushua because apparently this being spoken through the body of Yahushua, this word right here, it's a red letter. All right. Because he's talking to somebody that's going to overcome and inherit all things. So that's the reason why I think this is really the one that sits on the throne. That literally he's going to come down into a world with his people and dwell with his people. Even though he hasn't yet been perfected his own self, he's going to dwell with his people. And by faith, he will be perfected. He will overcome. That's the whole point. He will come down and he will not even know who he is. And you know, when you read the story about the Messiah, there's some things Yahweh didn't fulfill. He didn't fulfill it. All right. About the Messiah. Okay. Isaiah 49 says, listen, no owls unto me and hearken you people from afar. Thou hast called me from the womb, and thou was my mother as he made mention of my name. Made my mouth like a sharp sword and the shadow of his hand as he hid me, and made me like a polished shaft, his quiver as he hid me. All right. This is obviously talking about somebody, a Messiah figure. He said unto me, thou art my servant, O Israel, in whom I will be glorified. Then I said, I have labored in vain, spent my strength for naught, and in vain, yet surely my judgment is with the Lord. Right there, it says he has labored in vain and spent his strength for naught. This is a messianic figure. This was not Yahushua. Yahushua was perfect. He didn't do anything in vain. All right. Now I'm going to take a break real quick, and I'll come back on the same topic in a moment or two. I'll be right back. I guess continue to get back on there if you can. But yeah, so Yahushua, chapter 49, verse 4, was perfect. All right. That means if a person does not sin, they don't do anything wrong. They don't have any regrets. Then I said, I have labored in vain and spent my strength for naught, and in vain, yet surely my judgment is with Yahweh, my work with my God. That can't be Yahushua right there. All right. Now saith Yahweh that formed me from the womb to be his servant, to bring Jacob again to him, though Israel be not gathered, yet shall I be glorious in the eyes of Yahweh, my God shall be my strength. So this when you go through this Isaiah 49, you have to say, well, some of this is not really Yahushua, just like Isaiah 53. We see a suffering servant in Isaiah 53 as being Yahushua, but listen, when you go to Isaiah 53, there's a lot of that Yahushua didn't fulfill. It's not talking all the time about Yahushua. There's some things he did fulfill. But then, let's go there real quick. Who has believed our report, and to whom is the arm of Yahweh revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, as a root out of a dry ground. He has no form of comeliness. When we see him, there's no beauty that we should desire him. All right. He is despised and rejected of men. I'm going to be straight up with you. Yahushua was not despised and rejected of all men. He was, as a matter of fact, he had the whole world going after him. All right. Even at his death, there was a group of people that wanted him dead. The religious leaders, the chief priests, they had a group of folks that said, crucify him. But the ones that basically on Palm Sunday that was saying, Hosanna to the Son of David, blessed is he that cometh in the name of Yahweh, was not those people that were saying, crucify him. All right. That was not the same group of folks. The people that was there, you know, when he was riding on the donkey and putting the clothes on the ground and throwing palm branches everywhere, talking about Hosanna to the one that sits on, you know, the Son of David, you know, saved now. The ones that was really rejoicing about him coming into Jerusalem on that donkey were not the same folks that said crucify. The same folks that was rejoicing about him are the ones that when he was carrying his cross, they was around him and they were mourning. All right, those were the folks. All right. And right here it says he's despised and rejected of men. This is not Yahushua. All right. And I can prove it to you. Yeah. Let's check out what's his name? The chief priest said. Got his name. But he was chief priest at the crucifixion of Yahushua. Let's see if I can find it and search it real quick. John chapter 11, I thought it was around there. I wasn't sure. John 11:47. Then gathered the chief priests and the Pharisees and the council and said, what do we, but this man doeth many miracles. And if we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans shall come and take away both our place and nation. All right? That means that he was not rejected like that. He was really like a rock star, you know. You know, people loved him. Let's go back up here. And one of them, Caiaphas being the high priest, the same year said unto them, you know not nothing at all, nor consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, that the whole nation perish not. This he spake, not of himself, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus should die for that nation. Not only for that nation, but also he should gather in one, the children of God that were scattered abroad. We know that's talking about the other 10 tribes. All right. So Jesus, hold on just a moment. So the one we know as Jesus or Yahushua was really not rejected like that. He was rejected by the chief priests, scribes, and elders. Let's see. He was rejected of the chief priests, scribes, elders, the religious leaders of his day, but the common man received him, believed in him. Right. So let's go back to where we was just at. I used to think that too. He was a man nobody wanted to be around and all of that, despised and rejected. Now at his crucifixion, the people that was around him may feel that way, but the ones that really loved him, probably stayed away. Even his disciples took off and left, except John. But in actuality, people loved Yahushua. Let's go back up here, see real quick. Isaiah 53. For he should grow up before him as a tender plant, as a root out of dry ground. He had no form, no comeliness. We see him, there's no beauty that we should desire him. He despised and rejected of men, man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. We hid as it were our faces from him. He was despised and we esteemed him not. This is not yet, no. See, this is not Yahushua all the way, all right? What am I trying to say? That the one that fulfills this is somebody else is coming. And it could be the one that sits on the throne. The one that sits on the throne is despised and rejected of men, and a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid as it were our faces from him. He was despised and we esteemed him not. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God and afflicted. Not saying that Yahushua did not suffer. He was on that cross and suffered. But all of this about him being rejected and despised and all of that, that can't be him. All right. He was wounded for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquities, chastisement of our peace upon him, and by his stripes we're healed. Yahushua fulfills he partially fulfills this Isaiah 53, but not fully does he fulfill. Let me show you something else. Behold my servant whom I uphold, mine elect in whom my soul delighteth. I put my spirit upon him, and he shall bring forth judgment to the Gentiles. He shall not cry, watch this. And it's talking about the Messiah now, watch. He shall not cry, nor lift up, nor cause his voice to be heard in the street. Now, was that Yahushua? He shall not cry, nor lift up, nor cause his voice to be heard in the street. Yahushua had a loud voice, all right, and was causing his voice to be heard in the street. He cried, he lifted up, he caused his voice to be heard in the street. Yes, he did. So who is this right here? Like I said, I believe that it's the Father, the one that sits on the throne, that he will manifest and come down here and take on human flesh. Not only would Yahushua do it, but he would do it too. All right, and he would be a Messiah. He would be the one that's really coming, that's the true Messiah, the deliverer, the Redeemer. All right, and that's the one that Yahushua is waiting on. Yahushua is in the heaven, sitting on the right hand of the throne on high, waiting on this to happen. How could you say that? How could you say Yahweh is waiting on somebody to do something? Well, Revelation, we go back here, Revelation 7 again. We're going to start at verse 9. And after this, I beheld, and lo, a great multitude which no man can number, of all nations, kindreds, people, and tongues, stood before the throne. There it is. They stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hands, cried with a loud voice. Watch this, saying, "Salvation to our God." Look at this. And I've mentioned this before in previous studies. I want to go back over it again. Salvation to our God, will sit up upon the throne. Salvation to God? What does God need salvation for? All right. What does God that sit on the throne need salvation for? He's the one that gives salvation, right? So salvation to our God will sit up upon the throne and unto the Lamb. So both God that sit upon the throne and to the Lamb, they're saying salvation to them. Let's look at the word salvation, Greek 4991. What is that? What are they saying? It's soteria. It means rescue or safety. So what does the one that sits on the throne need to be rescued for and from? What does the Lamb need to be rescued from and for? All right, rescue or safety, physically or morally, deliver, health, salvation, saving, save, saving. Literally, it's saying that it's almost a blasphemy to almost even think it. It feels that way. I mean, they're standing before the throne, right? They're standing before the throne with white robes and palms in their hands, and they're standing before the throne, right? And notice it says they stood before the throne. And notice it didn't say they stood before the one that sits on the throne. They stood before the throne and before the Lamb. So the Lamb is personal, is a person, all right? But it doesn't say that they're standing before the one. It's just saying they stood before the throne, not before the one that sits on the throne. It's almost like he's not on the throne at the time. Stood before the Lamb and cried with a loud voice, "Salvation to our God will sit upon the throne and unto the Lamb." So what's going on there? You mean the one that sits on the throne needs salvation? That's what it's saying right here, y'all. But the one that sits on the throne needs salvation. How would he need salvation? Could it be, like I'm just saying, that he's going to come down and take on human flesh too? Except he won't come down here for the purpose of dying on the cross and shedding blood. He's coming down here for the purpose of overcoming. That's what Revelation is talking about, the one that overcomes. All right. And I also notice this, that he's sitting on the throne down here. It says, let's see. And it's talking about these ones standing before the throne and for the Lamb, saying salvation unto them. And the one that sits on the throne and for the Lamb. Verse 15 says, "Therefore are they before the throne of God and serve him day and night in this temple." So where's this temple going to be at? This temple has to be down here on earth. That means the one that sits on the throne's temple is going to make his temple here in Jerusalem. And his temple is always his house. His throne has always been in Jerusalem. Let me show you something. That Yah is going to come down here first and make his throne in Jerusalem. All right. Hold on just for a moment. All right, First Chronicles chapter 29, 23. Let's watch this. Chapter 29, 23. Then Solomon sat on the throne of Yahweh as king instead of David, his father. Right there, see that? So where's the throne that Solomon sat on? In Jerusalem, right? Solomon sat on the throne of Yahweh as king. All right. So what's going on there? Well, we read Revelation chapter 7, it speaks about they serving him day and night in his temple, and he that set up on the throne will dwell among them. That means that's here on earth. That has to be that the one that sits on the throne in heaven will be here on earth, sitting on the throne in Jerusalem. He'd be sitting on Yahweh's throne that he earned, the throne of David. Let's read that again. Then Solomon sat on the throne of Yahweh as king instead of David, his father, and prospered all over, and all Israel obeyed him. So the throne of Yahweh is the throne in the temple in Jerusalem. So basically, the one that has the throne in heaven is going to come down here and have that throne in Jerusalem. That's what's going on. All right. So whose throne is it? It's the throne of Yahweh. So who's the one that's going to be sitting on this throne in the end? Yahweh. This is where I used to think that Yahweh was Yahweh, because guess what? Yahweh sits on the throne of Yahweh in Jerusalem in the end. So it had to be Yahweh. If Yahweh is Yahweh, that just meaning Yahweh is going to sit on the throne. But what we've been talking about lately is that Yahweh is the body of the spiritual God, that unseen spiritual God in heaven. That basically the fullness of him is going to be in Yahweh on the throne. And he's going to be sitting in Yahweh's body. Now the question is, what tribe would Yahweh himself, if he manifests down here, and he's not Yahweh when he manifests, and basically overcomes, what tribe would he be of? What tribe would Yahweh himself sneaking down here as a human being to overcome and take that throne? What tribe of Israel would he be of? It has to all make sense. I believe that he would be a Levite. Yahweh's body is of Judah. And that gives Yahweh in that body access to sit on that throne, because the promises was to the seed of David, that seed, David's son, to sit up on the throne in Jerusalem. All right, that was the promise. So Yahweh earned that. But he is that physical body that earned the right to sit up on the throne. All right. And there's one issue though with that, because those that are born, the kings that came out of Jeconiah's seed, the word said that no man would prosper sitting on the throne of David from his seed, and Yahweh comes from his seed. But I've spoken on this in videos before, that Yahweh himself can sit up on the throne of David. It would have to be somebody else that sits on the throne of David in Jerusalem. And then what I see is that person would have to be somebody that has some access to the temple by birthright. It would have to be Levi. It makes perfect sense. But somebody else might have some other issue or other word about this. But this is what I've come to so far. that this throne of Yahweh in Jerusalem be set on by Yahweh himself. All right. Let's go back here. I'm about ready to cut this thing off in a second or two. Let's go back here where we were just at. That he will not cry nor lift up nor cause his voice to be heard in the street, right? That is not Yahweh. Hold on just a moment. Verse 2, for Isaiah 42, verse 2, he shall not cry, nor lift up, nor cause his voice to be heard in the street. That's not him. Because he was definitely vocal. Right off the top, he's crying out, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Right off the top. And he did it in the street, right? So who is this right here that the scripture is speaking of, this messianic figure? And why are they singing salvation to the one that sits on the throne and also unto the Lamb? I mean, salvation and deliverance and all of that. How would the one that sits on the throne in heaven need deliverance? All right. So this messianic figure that Isaiah 42 is speaking about, somebody shows up in the latter days. Verse 4, he shall not fail, nor be discouraged, till he have set judgment in the earth, and the owls shall wait for his law. This has to be in the latter days. All right. That has to be that stone that's cut out around the time of the Feast of Wheat Harvest that hits the image on the feet and grinds it to powder. That's the chaff of the summer threshing floor. That has to be him. It has to be him that's cut out without hands. Let's go back there again to 2 Corinthians where it says we have, verse 5, thus saith God, the Lord, that he that created the heavens and stretched them out, he that spreadeth forth the earth, and that which cometh out of it, he that spreadeth forth the earth, and that which cometh out of it, he that giveth breath unto the people upon it, the spirit and spirit to them that walk thereon. So this person right here that Isaiah 42 is speaking about has to be in the latter days. It's not Yahweh Shai. All right? It's not Yahweh Shai. It has to be the one that sits on the throne in heaven, because salvation, they're talking about salvation be unto him and unto the Lamb. So what would the Lamb need salvation for? Because the Lamb is waiting for something. What is he waiting on? He's waiting on salvation. That means deliverance. That means Yahweh Shai cannot literally live down here with us until this thing happens. That means he's a human being dwelling in a place where human beings were not ordained to dwell. He's in glory, sitting on the right hand of the Father. But I think his glory is much greater than that. He wants to sit on that throne. He wants to sit down here where he was, where he's supposed to be at. With his people. He wants to see the judgment on his enemies. All right. I don't think Yahweh Shai wants to just sit there in heaven like that forever. So he needs salvation too in that aspect. That's what it said, right? Salvation unto one that sits on the throne and also unto the Lamb. What do they need salvation for? All right. So when that salvation hits the one that sits on the throne and the one that sits on and when it hits the Lamb, that's going to be salvation for Israel totally. Israel will be totally saved at that time. When the one that sits on the throne has salvation and the Lamb has salvation. That means the one that sits on the throne would have to come down here to earth and dwell in a condition where he needs to be saved. That means he would put his own self in that situation for the purpose of saving his people or redeeming his people. So anybody should just look at that and say, Yahweh Shai went back to heaven. Why hasn't he come back yet? All right. It's not that this thing is not true and it's not correct. It's not righteous or it's a false religion. There's something going on here. And I do believe it is that the Father is coming down and is down here living a life to overcome. And when he overcomes, he's going to get that body, Yahweh Shai HaMashiach's body. The Father and the Son will be united back up again as one. And Israel will be one. All 12 tribes will be gathered back together again. With the Father and the Son being one, all right, the whole nation will be one. And we see them. I'm going to go to another scripture real quick before I cut this off. Malachi chapter 4. The day is coming, it's going to burn as an oven, all right? In Malachi chapter 4, verse 5, it says, behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of Yahweh. He should turn the heart of the fathers to the children. You think Yah is going to have something to do with this? Yeah. Fathers to the children. Remember, Yah, the one that sits on the throne, is a father. He's the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. Right? You turn the heart of the fathers to the children and the heart of the children to the fathers, lest I come and smite the earth for the curse. Who is coming that will smite the earth for the curse? Who is the one that will come and smite the earth for the curse? That had to be Yahweh right here. This is Yahweh talking. One that sits on the throne. And if he is the father, Elijah turning the heart of the fathers to the children, heart of the children to their fathers. All right. It has something to do with that one sitting on the throne, making a trek. And doing a work. This has to be the one that will be despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. This has to be the one. Because Yahweh Shai was received. He was received by the people. As we just saw, Caiaphas talking about it. That if they let him thus alone, the whole world would go after him. That's how popular he was. So these prophecies, as we go back to Isaiah 49, 42, and all of these prophecies, the fulfillment of it has to be somebody else that's a messianic figure. Because Yahweh Shai doesn't fulfill all of it. And I've heard many pastors and preachers say he does. So show me where he fulfills that he will not lift up or cause his voice to be heard in the street. Show me where he fulfills that he was been discouraged and failed to do the work. Isaiah 42. He shall not cry nor lift up and cause his voice to be heard in the street. Show me where he feels that, fulfills that. You know, because he was definitely vocal. He had a voice. Let's see another scripture. Isaiah 40. '49. Verse 4, then I said, I have labored in vain, I spent my strength for naught, and in vain, yet surely my judgment is with Yahweh, my work with my God. So where did Yahweh Shai labor in vain and spend his strength for naught? Where did he labor in vain and spend his strength for naught at? That's not in the scripture. All right, so there's another messianic figure coming up. That's how I see it. All right. And then when it's all said and done, everybody will be sitting around trying to figure out why couldn't figure that thing out. See that. Because he likes to sneak up on God, will sneak up on. There's a scripture that says, things that are revealed belong unto us, but the things that are not revealed to us belong unto Yah. All right. There's some things that are not revealed. They belong unto him. But everything else belongs unto us. There's a scripture that says about how did that scripture go, Dre? Where it says about a man searching it out. It's the glory of God to conceal the matter. Yeah, that's it. It's the glory of God to conceal the matter, but it's the honor of kings to search it out. So that means that if you see anything in the word that is questionable, you need to search it out. But it's the honor of kings to search it out. Right? And that's what I'm showing you right now, that Yahushua did not labor in vain and spend his strength for naught. Then who is this? And whoever it is, watch this, is the one that Yah has chosen to gather Jacob again to himself. And now saith Yahweh that formed me from the womb to be a servant to bring Jacob again to him, though Israel be not gathered, yet shall I be glorious in the eyes of Yahweh, and my God shall be my strength. See? So who is this? It can't be Yahushua. But anyway, that's a question. Let me see one more. I'm gonna follow the spirit on this. Follow the spirit on it. Jeremiah 30. This is right at the time of Israel being delivered. Jeremiah 30, we start at verse 18 and show you that it's around that time of Israel's deliverance. Thus said Jeremiah 30, verse 18, thus saith Yahweh, behold, I will bring again the captivity of Jacob's tents, and have mercy on his dwelling places, and the city shall be built upon their own heap, and the palace shall remain after the manner thereof. So this goes along with Isaiah 14, that speaks about when Yah has mercy on Jacob and on his dwelling places, and they're going to take them captives whose captives they were. This goes right along with it. It's the same picture, except from a different place from Jeremiah's point of view. And out of them shall proceed thanksgiving, the voice of them that make merry, and I will multiply them, and they shall not be few, and I will glorify them, and they shall not be small. Their children shall also be as aforetime, and their congregation shall be established before me, and I will punish all that oppress them. There it is. Watch this. And their nobles shall be of themselves, and their governor shall proceed from the midst of them. Now this is what you need to look at right here. Who is this governor? Now we know Israel came out of Babylon thousands of years ago and had a governor. His name was Zerubbabel. It had a priest named Joshua. But who is this governor right here? And it's talking about the latter days, y'all. Talking about the latter days. And their governor shall proceed from the midst of them, and I will cause him to draw near. He shall approach unto me. Some people might say, oh, that's Jesus. But it can't be Jesus right here, because this is at the time of the restoration of Israel. And at that time, this governor, he's going to call to draw near. It's at their restoration in the latter days. And he shall approach unto me, for who is this that engages his heart to approach unto me, saith Yahweh? Notice it don't give you the answer. It says, who is this that engaged his heart to approach unto me, saith Yahweh? And he says, and you shall be my people, and I will be your God. Behold, the whirlwind of Yahweh goeth forth with fury, a continuing whirlwind, and shall fall with pain upon the head of the wicked. The fierce anger of Yahweh shall not return until he have done it, until he have performed the intents of his heart. In the latter days, look at this, in the latter days you shall consider. So what is it in the latter days we shall consider that has something to do with this return of Israel, this restoration? It has something to do with this man, this governor approaching unto Yahweh. And he even marveling on it, saying, who is this that engaged his heart to approach unto me? You know, for anybody approach unto Yah unsummoned, is a death, is a deadly. But here's somebody that he calls to approach unto him, and he will approach unto him. He engaged his heart to do it. So who is this that Yah has ordained in the latter days, which he said you shall consider it? Who is this in the latter days Yah has ordained to approach unto him? It has something to do with the restoration of the children of Israel to their homeland. It's not talking about 2,000 years ago. It's talking about the latter days. And is Israel back in the land yet and been restored and their palace sitting on the right place and all of that? No. So this has to be after today, at least. All right. So we still got some things to understand. Now, we Hebrew Israelites, we're the chosen people. But there's still some things we have to understand more than just about who we are, about who Yahweh is. Because that's what's going to be They're the real, that's going to be the fire in the latter days. Who is Yahweh? Where is he at? Like I said, I believe he's coming down here, and if he's not already down, living as a human being, and he's going to overcome, and his reward would be that body, that heavenly body of Yahweh Shai Mashiach. And he will be that fullness of the Godhead bodily in Yahweh Shai. That means his body, his earthly body that has sin in it, will be swallowed up in victory with Yahweh Shai Mashiach's resurrected body. But anyway, let's go on. Let this go. But this is Pentecost, or not Pentecost, but the Feast of Wheat Harvest. All right, that is mistakenly called Pentecost, which they celebrated somewhere around June the 3rd or somewhere earlier this year. But in actuality, we just saw the counting. If you go back to this video at the beginning, the counting is 55 days if you add the 6 days before the first Sabbath. The 7 Sabbaths, you remember, was 49 days if you just started at the Sabbath day. But since it didn't start at the Sabbath day, it started before the Sabbath day at the Feast of Wave Offering, Sheaf of Wave Offering, which is 6 days before the next Sabbath. You got 55 days. It's not 50 days. And the day after that last Sabbath, then you number 50 days. It's 55 days plus 50. So that's around 105 days. And from Passover, the day after Passover, or the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, all the way until Feast of Wheat Harvest, it's 105 days. That's around 4 months that Yahushua spoke about. That harvest is 4 months after wherever feast that was, he was in Jerusalem for. 4 months. What feast is that? And it has something to do with the harvest, the whatever is in the field turning white, turning golden white like wheat and corn does in the summertime when it's ready for harvest. All right. So we need to get these things together and figure it out, you know. But even more than just knowing that we're the chosen people. All right. Because Yah might be coming down here and we're not ready for it. Okay. All right, everybody. Praise Yah. If y'all has been praying for me and everything, I still got a little tremble and I'm still not at 100%, but Yah, praise Yah, I'm getting better. Yah is healing me. And I'm able to, you know, at least get through some of these studies. I'm not as strong as I can be and should be, but praise Yah, I'm doing it. All right. But let's say a word of prayer. Father, we thank you and we praise you for your word, for your healing power, for what you're doing in our lives, even for what we just read today and we studied about the Father coming down here and taking on human flesh and getting a reward himself and reigning in Jerusalem on the throne of Yahweh. We ask and pray that you do this. If this is true, and this is what you're going to do, we ask and pray that you do it and you complete the work and that you redeem us as your people. And we may see you face to face and you may wipe away all tears from our eyes. By Hashem, Yahweh Shai Mashiach, we pray. If there's anybody that's going through and needs healing, we ask and pray that you heal and that you touch them. Just by them watching this video and being observant of it, we ask and pray that you heal them, that you'll restore them, that you'll bless, that you'll provide where people need provision. All right. We pray and we ask this and these things out of Yah, by Hashem, Yahweh Shai Mashiach. Amen. All right, everybody. Until next week, God be with you and God bless you.